The massive Fort Loudoun overlooked downtown Winchester, Virginia. Fearing attacks on the frontier after the defeat, Virginia's Governor Dinwiddie raised the funds for Washington to build Fort Loudoun. A Cherokee warrior allied to the British watches the surveyors at the Fort Loudoun site. Virginia Regiment soldiers under Washington worked hard clearing the land and cutting large trees to build Fort Loudoun. Colonel George Washington, who designed it, writes to Lieutenant Colonel Adam Stephen that the construction has started on Fort Loudoun, Winchester, Virginia, on May 18, 1756, states Jim Moyer. Moving the mass of logs needed to build the fort walls required brute force and teamwork. Virginia Regiment soldiers cut and shaped the fort's timbers and filled the wide space between the inner and outer walls with rocks and packed soil. Caption says, Fort Loudoun in 1756, George Washington supervised the construction of Fort Loudoun in Winchester as a defense. The construction of the large wood fort, including the interior buildings, took a couple of years to complete. Captain George Mercer, Fort Loudoun commander, addresses the company. One of the Fort Loudoun's four corner bastions, which had cannon on them. The fort contained several large buildings, including barracks. Cannon crews manned posts on the bastions. Alert Virginia Regiment sentries guarded the forts and camps. The massive double timber walls, reinforced with yards of stone and dirt fill, provided a tough defense against any attacks. Four-wheeled wagons and two-wheel carts were used to transport supplies to the Virginia Regiment in Fort Loudoun. The land around the fort was cleared of brush to deny cover to an approaching enemy. The cannon on the Fort Loudoun bastions were powerful weapons defending Winchester area families. Washington brought his own blacksmith to help with the fort's needs. A view of the hills to the west of Fort Loudoun from the top of a bastion. The fort became a staging point for supplies headed to outlying frontier forts. Fort Loudoun was similar to this one completed. A trench was an issue due to the limestone rock. Two years were spent digging and blasting the fort's well through that solid rock. George Washington designed the plans for Fort Loudoun, Virginia. Native Americans, brave and proud of their cultures, resisted the taking of their lands. French troops outside a settler's cabin on the disputed frontier. Harvesting crops on isolated farms was risky when the conflict flared up. A Virginia regiment column advances alertly en route to a frontier post. The western Virginia frontier was sparsely populated. French units conducted drills like the British and provincial troops. Wagons transported loads of supplies to Fort Loudoun from coastal cities. Shawnee and Delaware raiding parties traveling from the Ohio River area villages struck Virginia frontier settlements. Rangers were deployed along the frontier in all types of weather to scout in support of the Mercer Company. Indian war parties could strike quickly. French troops often fought alongside their Indian allies when attacking British forces or frontier outposts. Treating the Indians respectfully helped gain their cooperation with French units. A Virginia regiment company drives the enemy from a farm field. The loss of lives in the conflict was tragic. It could be dangerous for settlers to venture out to tend their herds. A French combatant is taken prisoner by Mercer Company soldiers. Mingo, Shawnee, and Delaware warriors were wary of the English settlers moving into their traditional hunting grounds in western Virginia. The natives were at home in the woods. City-recruited soldiers could be uneasy on wilderness patrols. Children taken captive during raids were often adopted into the tribe, but the fate of adults was often grim. This painting of George Washington shows him wearing his Virginia regimental coat. The western Virginia mountains posed an obstacle to the travel of armies. Cherokee warriors often fought on the side of the British and Virginia provincials. A soldier fires a small mortar during a field deployment. French troops discussed plans of advance with an Indian ally at a camp. Local militia scouts were dispatched from frontier forts as a warning system against Indian attacks. Shawnee and Delaware raiding parties blended in with nature till it was too late for unsuspecting settlers. Misty mountain valleys hid perils to isolated settlers and small military units. This Eric Cherry sketch depicts Fort Loudoun sitting on the hill. A Mercer Company detachment of the Virginia Regiment training in the countryside. Fort Loudoun hosted delegations of Cherokee and Catawba Indians allied to the British, local militia units, and British Army detachments. Pennsylvania provisional troops were involved regionally in the conflict. Tuscarora and Nottoway groups also made the long journey north to Fort Loudoun, Virginia. French soldiers take cover during a skirmish with British forces. Virginia provisional soldiers learned to fight from the cover of trees when possible, like the natives. Patrols were sent into the forest to look for signs of French and Indian activities. A joke is shared in the ranks. Caught in the open, these settlers were overwhelmed. A Pennsylvania regiment officer addresses his troops as the minister stands by to provide spiritual guidance. Women were often taken captive and at times adopted or married into the tribe. French Marines engaged British troops in a heavily wooded area. Fort Loudoun itself was never attacked. Mercer Company garrison of Fort Loudoun, June 15, 2019. Ladies of the company also participated.